While Australian federal laws already default terrorists against receiving bail or parole, the government has indicated it will tighten bail laws even further where terrorism is involved. Joining me now is Senior News Corp journalist Charles Miranda. Charles, I'll go to the Victorian examples in just a moment, but I know you've spent a lot of time in London. It's really captured the debate in this election campaign because there are two very distinct approaches between Boris Johnson and Jeremy Corbyn. And Jeremy Corbyn's had a lot of trouble expressing a toughness, I think, that Londoners and the British community want to hear in relation to just this ongoing threat of terror, which has really not abated in London for some time. How did you see it all play out in the media and in political terms after the weekend?
Yeah, look, London's had this problem, or the UK, I should say, has had this problem for many years, almost going back to the birth of ISIS in 2014. So they've had this issue, and they've been wrestling with this issue for a long time. And bearing in mind, they had a lot of Al-Qaeda-associated terror suspects, or convicted terrorists, I should say, in jail over there, who were also being released around this time, and they were having this discussion. The Conservatives have taken a fairly ardent approach, I guess you could say, which has been the right approach in terms of in the public's mind, that they have taken a very strong approach. Corbyn traditionally is always going to be very left of centre, and he's always going to take that argument that, as Labor Party over there, that these guys should be released early, should be reformed, and all the rest of it. But overseas experience has shown that does not work. You have to only look at what happened in Germany, what happened in the Netherlands, what happened in Italy, Spain. These were all people who had been convicted on the periphery, albeit, of terror, who then were released to go on to bigger things.
OK, let's look at the Australian example. We know that there are 54 people behind bars at the moment for serious terrorism offences. 10 set, as revealed by Ellen Winnett in your papers today, 10 set to be released by the end of next year. How do we grapple with this? I mean, it's not going to go away as a problem. It's faced by most Western nations. As I mentioned at the top of the show, the US is the only one that uniformly keeps them locked up.
Yes, yeah. Look, two words: limited options, and that was the headline from an internal working document that came out last year from the Federal Attorney General's Department. Limited options to manage the risk associated with those post-sentence, and that was their finding. That was their conclusion. And you can have all these sort of other groups in the community out there saying, but they should be given freedom and all the rest of it. But law enforcement will tell you it will cost between $4 and $6 million per jihadist to have them under surveillance. So this is a huge issue. $4 to $6 million per jihadist to watch them around the clock, 24/7.
Yeah, let me just jump in there too, Charles, because I tried to bust that myth. People need to understand at home. You're talking about 3 teams of 4 to 5 AFP specialised. They've got to be able to understand Arabic and other languages that might be used by the jihadists. There's got to be quite significant cyber coverage. You've got to have physical coverage of them. You've got to know where they are. You've got to be able to cover them in vehicles. You've got to be able to cover people going in and out of their homes. I mean, it's an enormous logistical response. And I know some in the left say, oh, that's OK, put them in the streets, we'll watch them. If anything happens, we'll be on top of it. I'm telling you, Australia is just not going to be feasible, resources and dollars. So where do we go?
It's absolutely not feasible, and if you ask law enforcement, they'll tell you the figures are even higher. They're saying they need a minimum of 5 8-person teams on a rotation to watch these people. I mean, do the math on that, and you're talking billions of dollars. You're talking thousands of ASIO agents or AFP agents to do the surveillance on that. Look, I think it's very much the attitude by law enforcement is to go your greatest risk. But we've seen in Burke Street in Melbourne that, you know, they can have under surveillance those who they deem to be the greatest risk, and then there's someone else who pops up and does some action. But you know, the government, it's a lose-lose situation.
Yeah.
Really, it really is for them.
And just quickly, I mean, a focus out of the weekend was de-radicalisation, And we know from last week, the Lowy Institute report says it just does not work. Again, today we had a Swinburne Dean of Law, no less, come out and say, again, no sense that these programs work in any way. We're kidding ourselves. And I would argue, and I've argued this internally in government, millions of dollars, 50 million is spent out of Canberra, go the way of particularly Islamic organisations and imams who are pretty radical. And they may not be advocating harm and terror. They certainly don't go out of their way to discourage it. And I just think this is where we've got to have a rethink as well.
Yeah, look, absolutely. And they're just the people we know about. But there's 200 other terror suspects in the community in Australia today. 75 active investigations into some of these guys. Now, these guys are not the ones that are in the radicalisation programs. They're the ones that are just being monitored because they could or are leaning towards terrorism. When you add the figure of those inside the de-radicalisation programs, and we're talking a lot of youth, particularly, there's no evidence that it works whatsoever, and the cost of that as well is astronomical.
Yeah, it's not going to go away. Charles Miranda, thanks very much for your insight.
Thanks, Peter.